What's up, everybody? Michael Walsh here. So I thought today I'd make a video looking at all of the male UFC champions and sort of evaluating their chances of becoming the GOAT. And I don't just mean the GOAT of their respective divisions, I mean the all-time GOAT. And I'm going to be going from flyweight to heavyweight. I'm going to be including Islam Makhachev, even though he's not a sitting champion at the moment. But before I go through that list, I thought I'd read for you my current top 10 GOAT list, because I made a video a little while back that was my top 20 GOAT list. So if any of you are interested in watching that, you're encouraged to click off now and go watch it before I spoil the last half of the list. It's a long video, but we get in the weeds about everyone's resumes, about why they should be where they are, and you're going to learn a few things about some great fighters if you watch it. But in any case, my top 10 in order from 1 to 10 was GSP number 1, Alexander Volkanovski number 2, John Jones number 3, Mighty Mouse number 4, Jose Aldo number 5, Merab Dvalishvili number 6, Khabib Nurmagomedov number 7, Anderson Silva number 8, Islam Makhachev number 9, and Fedor Emelianenko number 10. And of the current champions, if we're counting Islam, there's 3 on that list, and they were the only 3 in my top 20. So like Pantoja wasn't in my top 20. I made the list before Chimaev usurped Dricus, but Dricus wasn't in my top 20. Pereira is not the champ at the moment. He's getting a shot at his rematch coming up here in a minute, but Pereira is not in my top 20 either. So like that gives you a sense of, now you know who is and who isn't on my top 20 list, and it gives you a sense of maybe how much of a gap they have to close if they ultimately want to usurp George St. Pierre in that number 1 GOAT spot. So what I'm going to be looking at kind of 3 main things for everybody, which are their age, their current resume, and who they have available to fight in the foreseeable future, and kind of how that's going to help them improve their existing resume. So let's get into it. Starting with Pantoja, flyweight champion. I currently have him as the 3rd best flyweight of all time. I have him behind not only Mighty Mouse, but also behind Figueiredo. I know a lot of people are high on Pantoja. A lot of people love him. A lot of people were saying he's the flyweight GOAT. I think people have kind of walked that back now that Tim Elliott beat Kai Asakura. But in any case, he's not the flyweight GOAT. He's not even close to being the flyweight GOAT. He's only had 3 defenses, and 2 of them are aging poorly. The Kai Asakura win is aging very poorly, and the Steve Ercich win is aging very poorly, and that was a split decision win, very controversial. He arguably lost. Steve did a lot of damage to Pantoja in that fight. And Pantoja is 35. He snapped the curse that no champions under welterweight, at the age of 35 had won. In title fights, Volkanovski also broke that curse when he beat Lopez for the vacant belt. But, and that's all well and good, and Pantoja looked really good against Kai Kara France, but again, he is still 35, and his resume is still pretty weak. It's his hopes of even closing the gap between him and Mighty Mouse, let alone gaining the number 1 spot and taking GSP's spot, his hopes for that are basically non-existent. And it's not helped by the fact that he doesn't have many people to fight. The flyweight division, he's cleared out most of the people at the top. He's already beaten Moreno, he's beaten Royval, he's beaten Kai Kara France. There's not a lot for him. His best possible shot would be to go up to bantamweight and try to beat Merab. And that's a fight I'd love to see. I think I'd be more interested in seeing that than I would be in seeing Merab fight Sandhagen, or fight, have rematches with Jan or anyone else. But even if he managed to do that, even if Pantoja went up to bantamweight and beat Merab, let's say he finishes Merab, he gets his back, he chokes him out or something, that would do wonders for him. That would put him somewhere in my top 20 GOAT list. But even that would not be enough, I think, to take the number 1 spot. And that's quite a long shot for him to go up and beat Merab. So Pantoja, of all the male champions, has some of the worst prospects in terms of becoming the GOAT. So, speaking of Merab, moving up to him, Merab, the bantamweight champion, he's pretty high on my list. He's already number 6. And he's got a really good win streak. I think he's at 13, and that's approaching Anderson Silva's, all-time win streak record of 16. But I don't know that there's a lot Merab can do to actually become the GOAT, because he's in a similar spot to Pantoja where he just doesn't have a lot of good people to fight anymore in his division, because, they're giving him Sandhagen because there's just not a good other contender that he hasn't beaten already. And quite a lot of my praise for Merab is hinging on the fact that he beat Jan, he beat O'Malley, he beat Umar, and stylistically, that's just such a diverse and challenging crop of guys to fight back to back to back. But with that now being done, he just doesn't have much left. And like, what can he do? He can rematch Jan, but so what? Like, even if he rematches Jan and finishes him, like, yeah, that helps his resume a little, but like, that's just redoing what he already did. That's just treading on old ground. That's kind of like when Usman rematched Covington or rematched Masvidal, or when, Cain Velasquez, he rematches Junior Dos Santos in the trilogy fight. It's like that stuff helps, and it gives you another win and another defense, and it really irons out any doubt that you were better than that person. But it's not helping your resume much. It's kind of like, that's one of the reasons we were mad when the Yair Rodriguez rematch with Volkanovski was being floated by the UFC. It's because we all knew it wouldn't do anything for Volk's legacy. Even though it did something for his legacy to beat him the first time, the rematch would do virtually nothing. And that's sort of the situation Merab is in. And he has the same option that Pantoja had, which is to move up. So imagine a scenario where Volkanovski fights Lerone Murphy next and beats him, and Merab beats Sandhagen in their upcoming fight. Like, what if Merab went up to fight Volkanovski, and what if he beat him? All of a sudden, Merab's sitting on a 15-fight win streak, which is nearing the record. And not only did he beat Jan and O'Malley twice, and Umar, and then Sandhagen, which is a good win, but like, defending against him, but then to go up and dethrone a bigger guy who's quite a challenging stylistic matchup in Volkanovski. If he's able to do Merab shit to Volkanovski, he'd have an argument. I'm not sure it puts him at number one, but he'd have an argument. Now, Merab's in a tricky spot age-wise because he's 34, which is starting to get up there. He's only been fighting for 11 years. He's had just under 30 fights, so he's not quite as shop-worn as that age might suggest. But he's not going to have that much longer to go, especially with a style like his that's so taxing on the body. It's so labor intensive. Like, that's the sort of style that once you start aging out and once you start getting injured, you tend to fall off quickly, just like a Cain Velasquez. So like, Merab has a shot. Again, like, I don't see him doing it unless he goes up and fights Volkanovski. But if he does that, and if he can win, and if it's against a Volk that still looks okay, because Volk's old too, so if Volk looks bad in his next fight, that's going to take some shine off whoever beats him next, including Merab. So, because Volk is even older. Volk is 36. So there's a lot of things that need to kind of align, but they're not outside of the realm of realistic possibilities. So I'm going to put Merab in sort of that middle ground of what his chances of becoming the GOAT are. Moving on to Volkanovski. He, I think, has the best shot because all he needs to do is beat Movsar Evloev. Now, you can go back. I made a whole video about how the UFC was basically robbing Alexander Volkanovski of GOAT status by specifically denying him the Movsar fight. Because I think, sure, it'll look good if he can beat Lerone Murphy and whatever. If Merab went up and he beat him, that'd be good. But specifically Evloev, if Volk can beat him, I think that might cement him as the GOAT. That might be the one thing that pushes him over and gets him ahead of GSP. Because again, I put Volkanovski at number 2 all time. So he's within arm reach. He's not that far from GSP as it sits. And I think specifically beating Evloev, there'd be a strong argument for him taking that number 1 spot. So, the sad reality, though, is that I'm not sure they'll give Evloev that shot. They'll almost certainly make him fight someone else. And if he beats that person, hopefully they give him the shot. Hopefully Volk is still around because he is 36. So, similar to Merab, it's like some things need to align, but I think it's more realistic for Volk. I think all he needs to do is stick around and fight Evloev, and he can become the GOAT. So I think in a lot of ways, he's got the best shot. He's got the fewest steps and the fewest, weird, oh, I need to change divisions. I need to, fight this guy who has this huge advantage over me. He has the least challenges on that front. It's mostly just age that he's facing at the moment. So moving up to lightweight, we're going to look at Topuria. Topuria is a tricky one because I didn't even have him in my top 20 GOAT list, and it's just because I thought it was premature. I thought he's done some great things, but he did it against older names, and he's just too young in his career. Like, it could all fall off a cliff soon. Imagine if Topuria fought, Paddy Pimblett, or he fought Arman Tsarukyan next, and he lost to them. Let's say he fought them both back to back. Like, let's say he fights Paddy and loses, and then he fights Arman and loses, or vice versa. And then he says, okay, I guess lightweight's not working out. I'll go back down to featherweight. And let's say John Silva's the champion at that point, and then Silva knocks him out at featherweight. All of a sudden, Topuria's on this 3-fight losing streak in both divisions, and no one's going to have him on their GOAT list at that point. You know what I mean? So, like, when you're that early in your career and you're still in your prime and there's still that much room for things to fall off a cliff, it's hard to rank you. However, if that doesn't happen, and I don't think that'll happen, I am very optimistic about Topuria's future. But if he keeps going forward, if he is able to beat guys like Paddy, guys like Arman, that alone would be massive. Because he already has a defense at featherweight. If he gets 1 or 2 defenses at lightweight, he's already, somewhere in the GOAT discussion. But he needs to do more than that. He needs to actually stick around. He can't do the McGregor thing. He can't do the Cejudo thing. He can't do the Khabib thing. He needs to stick around long enough to make it a little more unquestionable. Now, if the stars align and it allows him to move up to welterweight to fight Islam and he can beat Islam, then that's pretty massive. I'm not sure exactly if that's enough to, like, usurp GSP. Like, let's imagine he defends against Paddy, against Arman, whoever. Let's say he gets 1 defense at lightweight. So he's got 1 defense at featherweight, 1 defense at lightweight. That's a resume very comparable to Henry Cejudo, who had 1 defense at bantamweight, 1 defense at flyweight. But then he goes up to welterweight and he beats Islam for the belt. That's pretty massive. That's, 3 divisional champion. That's 3 divisional success. That's 2 defenses. Those are some really great names at that point. But even there, though, there's it starts getting into the topic of why being a champion is impressive in the first place. And if you get 2 shots at belts in other divisions and you just get immediate shots, and one of them is against an old guy in Oliveira, and one of them is against just a former lightweight who went up in Islam, and you just skip the queue, it's just not the same as being an actual champion who had to climb the ranks. Because that's why being a champion is impressive. It's because you have to start from the bottom, climb your way up, beat the contenders, and then get the belt. And even just doing that, we don't think is that impressive. There's countless champions out there who never defended the belt, who were good fighters, but who are just aren't even sniffing being on a GOAT list. Just look at Rashad Evans, Lyoto Machida, guys like that. What really makes a champion impressive is when you defend the belt a few times, because then you've climbed the rankings, you've beaten increasingly good contenders, you win the belt, then now you're the one with the target on your back. You get some other new waves of top contenders, and you beat a few of them. That really shows you as a great in that division. Just leapfrogging everyone and getting a shot at a sort of conveniently beatable champion in an upper weight class, for me, does not do that much to help your case, help your argument for being a GOAT. So Topuria, again, if he does that, if he beats Paddy, if he beats Arman, and then he beats Islam at welterweight, I'm still not sure that would put him at number 1. It would put him somewhere. It would probably make him top 5 or something. But it doesn't put him at number 1. So, to me, he has a realistic shot at being number 1, but only if he sticks around longer than that. There's just no way, there's no path in my mind where he only fights 2 or 3 more times and bounces. There's no version of that where he becomes the GOAT. Now, if he sticks around a little longer, if he fights 5 or 6 or 7 more times, he's got a very realistic shot at becoming the GOAT. And he doesn't even have to win at 170 to do that. If he just defends at lightweight 5 times, probably the GOAT. So I think it's doable, but I'm worried he won't do it. So I like his chances less than I liked Volk's. Moving up, we got Islam. Islam's another weird one because I have him at number 9. I think his resume is weird because, yes, he broke the record for defenses at lightweight. Yes, he's beaten a good diversity of skill sets in his opponents. Yes, he's on one of the biggest win streaks in UFC history. That's all well and good. He's looking pretty unstoppable. But there's some fool's gold in there. He beat old guys. Oliveira was past his prime a little bit. when Islam beat him and took his belt. Dustin Poirier definitely past his prime. Moicano past his prime. Dustin Poirier and Moicano shouldn't even have been in there with him. The Volk rematch was on short notice. Like, Volk shouldn't have been in there with him. Like, every one of his title wins, and even his like wins leading up to that, like his win over Dan Hooker, like, they're all over former featherweights. And I'm not saying that totally discredits them or that Oliveira isn't like properly sized at lightweight, but someone like Islam could never make featherweight. Someone like Khabib could never make featherweight. Someone like Arman Tsarukyan and Paddy Pimblett could never make featherweight. Like, those are actual lightweights, and Islam's been fighting featherweights, and so that all diminishes him a little bit. And even if people remember, people were arguing if he even deserved a title shot in the first place because it was all quantity over quality. He was on a 10-fight win streak, I think, going into that fight. But people were still debating if he should be in there because he hadn't beaten any top contenders. He hadn't beaten anyone in the top 5. And so he has that long win streak, that sort of padded win streak. He wins the belt and then he defends. But again, like everything I just said about his title wins. So he's in a weird spot. That's why I only have him at number 9. I've seen some people put him at number 1, and I think that's very hard to justify. And just beating JDM is not enough. Okay? Because it's a similar thing where it's like, I get where JDM is a good fighter. I get where people are pitching him as sort of like Dustin Poirier 2.0, Dustin Poirier but better, Dustin Poirier but bigger. People are saying, oh, Craig Jones, the anti-wrestling. He just beat Bilal Muhammad and showed that he can like overcome that style. And I'm not even sure who I'm going to pick going into that fight. I'm sort of like leaning towards Islam, but I'm not dismissing JDM as a champion or as a challenge for Islam, but JDM is, again, sort of like an opportunistic guy to fight because I'm not convinced JDM's the best welterweight in the world because I wasn't convinced Bilal was, and JDM was a kind of undeserving contender, and that fight was really close. So, like, I get that the shine off Shavkat has largely been diminished, but just bear in mind, we've got Shavkat, we've got Sean Brady, we've got Ian Gary. Like, welterweight's looking really good at the moment, and I can't say with any confidence that JDM is actually the best welterweight in the world right now. And he's not the biggest, he's not the strongest grappler of the bunch, and he's just kind of a good, if Islam is gonna fight one of the top welterweights, JDM is like one of the preferred ones he'd probably want to fight, so it's tricky. Like, I think if he can beat him, if Islam can win the welterweight belt, it'll improve his spot. It'll move him up from number 9 on my list, of course. But it's not going to get him at number 1. He's not going to replace GSP with that. And he is getting up there in age. I think he's already 33. I checked before the video. I'm pretty sure it's 33 and not 34. But he's getting up there, and he's been fighting a long time, And so he's not got that long left. And it comes down to, like, he can go back to lightweight and fight Topuria, and if he does that, that's pretty gnarly. That'll help his case a lot. He can stay up at welterweight and try to defend, but that's going to get hard really quickly. So, I don't know. I think the path is there. I'm not writing it off, but I don't like Islam's chances. And I think a lot of people are speaking as if the JDM win just automatically puts him at number 1, and I don't agree with that in the slightest. But that's where it stands. Moving up, we've got Khamzat. Now, Khamzat, I think it could become the GOAT. He just has a lot of work to do because he, I think, has the potential, especially if he starts fighting regularly, to do what John Jones did when he initially won the title. When he just, within like a year, within like 12 months or so, he beat Shogun, he beat Rampage, he beat Machida, he beat Rashad. Like, he was just wiping out the old guard, and they were all big names. Like, I feel like he can just do that to his contenders right now, and I think there's some people that could beat him. There's some people that are going to offer some interesting challenges to him. But I kind of like his chances against everybody at the moment. So I could see him being Fluffy Hernandez, beating Imanov, beating Kaio, beating Drickus in a rematch, like whatever. Like, he could just get like 3 or 4 defenses back to back really quickly, and just dominate these guys. He could potentially go down to welterweight. Like, I don't think he's that big, and I There was the whole thing with the scale for the title fight and how he came in at 183 and all that kind of stuff, and people are speculating about how big he actually is. But I think he has a shot at making welterweight, especially if he just does it once, and especially if he wants to do it against someone like Islam, because he could go down to welterweight, beat Islam, and maybe people would favor Islam, but I would probably favor Khamzat in that one because of the sheer physicality gap. But like, he could go down there. He'd be a 2-division champ at that point. He's already got success at welterweight. He has the chance to go up to light heavyweight, and against Ankalaev, that's a tall order, but against anyone else, I could see him beating them. I don't think he could go all the way to heavyweight and beat Tom Aspinall, but like, he's got legit 3-divisional success, like, in his potential future. Legit 3-belt success in his potential future. And legit chances at a lot of defenses at middleweight, and he is still pretty young. So we'll see. He's proven to be a fickle guy as far as his motivation, as far as his career goals, as far as how frequently he fights. So we'll see. I'm not like betting the house on it, but I think he's got a lot of potential. But the problem is it'll take time. Like, he's got the potential. I could see it lining up that way. But unlike someone like Volkanovski, who literally needs like one more win to be the GOAT, Khamzat needs like 7 more wins or something. So, and I could see him getting those wins, and he's got the time, but, I don't know. I don't see it. Circling back to JDM, because I just realized I skipped him because I talked about Islam first. JDM's chances. JDM is in like a similar spot to Chimaev, but his prospects are worse. Both because I don't see JDM going between weight classes. I think he's too big for lightweight. I don't like the idea of him going up to middleweight. Certainly don't like him going up to light heavyweight. And again, I'm not convinced he's the top dude in his division. Now, he's got a skill set, and he's young. I think he's only 28. He's got the ability to beat everybody. Like, I could see him beating Sean Brady. I could see him beating Shavkat. I could see him beating Ian Gary. I could see him beating Islam. So he's got the skill set, he's got the time where he could become this long-reigning champion. But very quickly then you're going to say, okay, well, who are the GOATs at welterweight? It's clearly GSP, and then it's Usman. And even Usman had, I think it was 5 title defenses, because he beat Woodley, beat Covington twice, so that's 2 defenses, beat Masvidal twice, 2 defenses, beat Burns. So yeah, 5. So just to even catch up to Usman, he's got to beat 5 guys. And to beat GSP, GSP has I think 9 defenses, and he's got the title at middleweight, and he never lost in his prime. Like, JDM has a long road ahead of him. And I'm not convinced he has the skill set to guarantee that. Could it happen? Yes. Are his prospects as hopeless as Pantoja's? No. But, he'd have a lot of proving to do for me to take that possibility seriously. So that's him. Moving up to light heavyweight, Ankalaev. This is a tricky one because he's looking very good at light heavyweight. He had this massive win streak before he got the title shot, or rather, he got a title shot against Jan, and then it was a draw, and then they wouldn't give him another one, and etc. But this massive win streak before he won the belt. And so he's largely cleared out the division. He's got a few more people to fight. He's got the rematch with Pereira coming up. I like his chances against everyone. Like, I like his chances against Pereira. I like his chances against Jiri. I like his chances against Jamal Hill, against Khalil Roundtree. And if he beats all those guys, he's looking very good. He's closing the gap between himself and John Jones. And he could go up to heavyweight. And I'm not saying I'd pick him to beat Tom Aspinall, but he could beat Tom Aspinall. And if he did, that would mean a lot. But again, you'd have this situation where it's like, is this better than what John Jones did? Because John Jones, greatest light heavyweight of all time, also went up, also won the UFC heavyweight title. The Gane win is legit for Jones. Beating Tom would be a much more legit win, and he's beating, some very good guys at light heavyweight. But still, I don't think you can compare. Even if he beat everyone I listed, you still couldn't quite compare Ankalaev's light heavyweight resume to Jones's. And part of that's just longevity, right? Like, Jones was the champion at 23, and yeah, he had years of inactivity, got stripped of the belt and stuff, but like, he was at the top of that division for a decade. you know. And he fought new waves, and he fought guys his own size at, you know, at various points. Like he beat, you know, Glover Teixeira like earlier in Glover's career, and Glover's a guy who, as an old man, Jerry Prohaska barely beat. You know what I mean? So like you get a bit of that, you know, Demetrius versus Pantoja effect happening there. And yeah, there's things to criticize about Jones's resume, but and about his, it depends on how big of an asterisk you want to put on the steroids and everything, and the other cheating. But nevertheless, I have a hard time seeing Ankalaev eclipsing Jones. And again, I only have Jones at number 3. Then it's like, you know, but can you replace, even if you can somehow outdo what Jones did and become your divisional great and everything, can you do better than Volkanovski? Can you do better than GSP, who did similar things? Especially GSP did very similar things. Long reigning champion, won the belt up a division. Yeah, it was against a kind of shaky middleweight champion in Michael Bisping, but still, GSP is a small welterweight, and he beat, you know, a legit middleweight who used to fight a light heavyweight in GSP and finished him. Like, that's a pretty awesome example of multi-divisional success. And, you know, does simply defending the light heavyweight belt a couple times and beating Tom, which is quite optimistic, is that enough to outdo what GSP did? I don't think it is. So, and Ankalaev is already, I think, 34, I believe. I did check before this video, but going from memory, I think he was 34. And that doesn't count as much against him in these higher divisions, but it's not helping. You know, he doesn't, you know, because it's going to take years. You know, he's going to, you know, this is like, to get those defenses to fight Tom, that is a multi-year project. He's going to start aging out eventually. You know, he's been fighting a while. Like, this is, I'm not sure I like his chances. I like his chances of, like, getting top 10, maybe even top 5 potentially. If he can do all of this, getting top 5, maybe, you know, or sniffing top 5, getting in kind of where, like, I've got, like, Dvalishvili and Khabib right now, but, like, getting to number 1, I don't see it. And then with Tom Aspinall, like, I just made a video about how his entire heavyweight legacy is in jeopardy because he has no one he's fought. Like, or he's got no other GOATs to fight, and that he has fought. Because, and by GOATs, I mean GOATs at heavyweight, because Jones ducked him and never fought him. Ngannou left, and Stipe retired effectively after Ngannou beat him. So all Tom can do is just rack up wins against, like, lower tier heavyweights, against heavyweights who are going to age terribly on a resume. And, I just feel bad for him. He's got nothing, it's not that he's not good enough, and he's pretty young for the division, but even if he just racks up this giant win streak, like, that's all just to try to beat Fedor as, like, the greatest heavyweight of all time. And that's all just to get into the top 10 of the GOAT discussion. So to close that gap, like, just closing the gap between him and Fedor at the moment is almost, it's doable, but it's almost impossible. Like, it's the odds are stacked against him. And to then close that gap, the gap between Fedor and GSP, the gap between number 10 and number 1 in the GOAT list, that is like similarly unlikely to Pantoja, if I'm being real. So I think Tom's chances, at both ends of both extremes of the champion divisions, at flyweight and at heavyweight, with Pantoja and with Tom, I think their chances are almost non-existent of becoming the GOAT. And so that's everyone covered. Again, Pantoja and Tom, almost no shot. Merab, there's a shot. Volkanovski, maybe the best shot. Like, he really needs to beat Evloev. Topuria, there's a legit shot, but he needs to stick around a while. He can't just win another belt or something. Same with Islam. JDM, there's a shot, but it's so far down the road, and it's so not a given that he's the best in the division that I'm not liking his chances. Chimaev, better shot, could win multiple belts, could really clear out his division quickly, so better shot. Ankalaev, not liking his chances either. Like, he can close the gap between himself and Jones, but overcoming Jones and then, overcoming Volk and GSP, I don't like his chances. So that's how it sits.